Good morning, everybody, and welcome to worship with the community of First Unitarian Church of Omaha. My name's Mary Kay Peters, and I'll be serving as your worship associate this morning. Whether you're attending online or in person, I'm glad you've chosen to join us for worship today. I offer up a special welcome to visitors who might be here for the first time. And if you're joining us online, I know there's a few people joining us online, I want to just say hello and encourage you to also chat with other online attendees. And so I'm just going to take a moment for everybody to just kind of say hello and welcome the people sitting around you. If you want to just turn around and say hello. Okay, so this congregation is an inclusive community that listens, engages, inspires, and acts. Our mission is to foster the whole person with compassion and justice. We're on many journeys, but together we're a one church. And we're also a community of all ages and abilities with a rainbow of gender and sexual identities and diverse cultural and class backgrounds. And we draw from many different sources for inspiration and common, shared, liberal religious values. So whoever you may be here today, we welcome you to bring your whole self into this community. And our service today, we have a guest, Nancy Cruz, and she's going to be focusing on a covenant of reciprocity with the earth and how groups like hers, she's in Milkweed Matters, how they fulfill that covenant. We also have a book in the back foyer when you came in, and I'm going to ask Carol, I forgot to tell her, Carol to move it, the Joys and Concerns book to the back, just so we're going to take a moment where people can fill in their joys and concerns if they haven't done it already. Just leave it in the back. We're going to, people give time. It's like the first time we're doing this. So, let's see. And we'll lift those up in worship today. And for those online, feel free to use the online comments to share your joys and concerns today. And as always, we'll share coffee and conversation together in the common room downstairs after the service. And Nancy and Milkweed Matters, they have a table set up down there for information. And also we have a parking validator back there in the foyer. I think for those who are parking in the garage, they can validate their ticket. And also want to just take a moment to affirm that our church occupies the traditional treaty lands of the Omaha and Otoe, Missouri tribal nations, and that we express our respect to the Northern Ponca, Winnebago, and Santee Sioux tribes. So we ask that everybody joins us in supporting local causes, charities, and rights of the indigenous people in the area. We have one quick announcement that Kaylin's going to come up and make. Just a second.
Thank you. Good morning. This is sort of a last-minute announcement. The Center for Immigrant and Refugee Advancement is sponsoring a camp for a group of immigrant children in the first week of August. And one of the things that they're doing, and some of us from UU who are in the social justice committee or our team are taking part of that, but we wanted to share it with the congregation. There's two things that could happen. We could use a couple more people to make sandwiches. We're going to be making a sack lunch for kids when they go to the zoo on Wednesday. And also, there'll be a basket downstairs for a free will offering if you feel so inclined, excuse me, to give something toward that program. We feel that it's an important support of that community. Thank you.
All right, so once again, that was Wednesday, August 6th, I think, that they're going to the zoo. Okay, and now our prelude is Moon River. All right, thank you. That was Judy Unger on piano and our guest violinist, Emmanuel Sayens. Thank you. And I have a special picture from Jeremy Rose, my favorite photographer out of Council Bluffs, and he always does beautiful pictures of the river. So this is the railroad bridge down by the casino and sunset. Thought it was good for Moon River and for our service today, which is speaking of the earth. And now we're going to have our chalice lighting. So I'm going to ask Nellie to come up and light our chalice. So the chalice is the symbol of our faith, and the words are on the order of service, so I invite all of you to say the words with me as Nellie lights the chalice. Spark of the Spirit, cupped in earth's embrace, light of love, alive in all creation, as we kindle this flame, we rekindle our connection to the sacred web of life. Yes, and now we're lighting our sabbatical candle. It's the 4th week of our minister's sabbatical, and we trust that this candle will light her way back to us come November. And I have lots of pollinator pictures today. That's kind of our theme. So here we have a dragonfly and a butterfly in a rock garden that a friend has in the area. And the reading for our call to worship is by Robin Wells Kimmerer. I'm also going to be doing a lot of her work today. She's a botanist and also indigenous woman, part of the Potawatomi tribe. We are all bound by a covenant of reciprocity, plant breath for animal breath, winter and summer, predator and prey, grass and fire, night and day, living and dying. Water knows this, clouds know this. Soil and rocks know they are dancing in a continuous giveaway of making, unmaking, and making again the earth. Our elders say that ceremony is the way we can remember to remember. In the dance of the giveaway, remember that the earth is a gift that we must pass on just as it came to us. When we forget, the dances we'll need will be for mourning, for the passing of polar bears, the silence of cranes, for the death of rivers and the memory of snow. And our opening hymn is 301 in the gray hymnal, Touch the Earth, Reach the Sky, and I invite everyone to stand in body or spirit as we sing. Okay, and then our offertory. Each week, half of the loose currency in the offering plate is donated to a local cause so more people can do more good. Our Share the Plate recipient for July is Omaha for Us, building intentional community and creating equitable space in service to LGBTQ+ individuals and families in the local area. And we're going to hear Romantic Pieces #1 by Dvorak. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to enter the part of the service that's devoted to care and centering. And today I have something just a little bit different. Judy and I are going to do a quiet hymn, Comfort Me, if it's 1002 in the teal, if anybody wants to join us. And I'm also going to give, while we do that, give people a couple minutes to make sure they've written down their joys and concerns. And is the book still back there? Or there's a piece of paper. Oh, okay, it's still back there. And those I'll share when we're done with our hymn. And also, I have a chalice up front if somebody wants to just add a rock to the chalice just to quietly be in together and with all of our concerns. If there's something you don't want lifted up, you can do that. It's right in front. So, all right, we're just going to quietly start. And so you have like 3 or 4 minutes to add joys or concerns if you want to add something. Okay, I do have something here from Judy to be lifted up. Concern and good thoughts of love and strength for our immigrant friends and neighbors who are under constant threat from our government. And we are having a special service next Sunday by Omaha Together One community and their immigrant action team to discuss some of the latest developments. I think we had a couple more people write their joys and concerns. Do you mind bringing it up? And Carol's going to bring it up. Colin, is there anything online to share? Okay. Just one more minute. Elaine Wells said, please send prayers and good vibrations to Scott Kemper. And also, he might appreciate cards, and she'll be glad to give his address. He's still in, it looks like Clarkson Tower at the Med Center, 6th floor. And I know that Bob Bosco is also watching from home. He recently had some surgery, and he sends his regards. And Alyssa Joaquin has a concern that her mom passed away from having a massive stroke. And her service is going to be held on Wednesday. So we all send our condolences for this. Okay, so we're going to move on to a contemplative reading. And this is actually a picture of my hometown over in Council Bluffs. I'm on the other side of the river. So I just wanted to start with a nod to Council Bluffs, Iowa, where I've lived there for 25 years. And in 2022, we received a Bee City USA designation in recognition of a commitment to improving landscapes for pollinators. And so this is Bee City. It's an initiative to galvanize communities to sustain pollinators by providing them with healthy habitats and a variety of native plants, and it has to be free of insecticides. That's pretty important, don't you think? Also, our mayor, Matt Walsh, signed the National Wildlife Federation's Mayor's Monarch Pledge, and joining other local leaders across North America committed to protecting the monarch butterfly and other pollinators. And through this pledge, the City of Council Bluffs is creating and restoring pollinator habitats in parks, gardens, and public spaces, while also engaging with the community through education, events, and outreach. And by embracing that initiative, Council Bluffs is helping to ensure that monarchs and the ecosystems that depend on them can thrive for generations. And I don't want to leave out Nebraska, because I know that, by the way, Douglas County has 111 certified pollinator habitats. What I just looked on the map this morning. They're certified by Nebraska Extension Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources. And a study that they recently did found it's really important is not just the size. It's really not the size, but the garden quality is what's really important. So it's the type of plants that are in the garden. And that has the best benefit for pollinators. So I'm gonna step back into the spirituality of Robin Wall Kimmerer, and she has a book, Braiding Sweetgrass, that I'm very fond of. So I have several pictures of different pollinators to show you while I go through some of her points in this book and how we're all bound by a covenant of reciprocity And I think everybody here knows that Unitarian Universalism is a religion of covenants. And we also have a lot of folks in our denomination who are believers in earth-based spirituality and or religious naturalists. So I think this kind of holds a special place in our hearts. And so point number 1 is gratitude is a daily practice, not just a feeling. An example that Robin gives is the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving Address, a practice of beginning each day with thanks for the earth, the plants, the animals, and the waters, every day. Imagine what would shift in all of us if we began everything with thanks. Here's a beautiful moth. And number 2, the earth loves us back. Not just we love the earth, but the earth loves us back. What if every apple that falls, every breeze that cools our skin, every medicinal plant that provides healing is a gesture of care and affection? It's not extraction, it's a relationship. Not dominance, but devotion. And when you believe the earth loves you, caring for it becomes something sacred, not optional. And here we have another beautiful moth. Third point, we can't just take, we have to give back. Reciprocity runs like a river through our lives. If you take from the earth, you must also give, like the Potawatomi story of the honorable harvest. Take only what you need, never the first, never the last. Give a gift in return. This is a land ethic. When was the last time you gave something back to the earth that wasn't just garbage? Everybody think about that for a moment. I'm sure there's people here that do. We probably have a lot of gardeners here. Here's a B. Number 4, science and spirituality aren't opposites. They're complements. Facts without poetic meaning are sterile. But storytelling and spirituality also need some grounding. When we braid them together, like sweet grass, they become strong. Make room for both logic and feeling in your understanding of the world. And never forget compassion and loving kindness. That's actually my little input. I heard that from the Dalai Lama, not Robin. Okay. Here's slide number 5. This is from a farm down in Glenwood, Iowa. Healing ourselves is bound to healing the earth. Consider if the disconnection we might feel from our purpose, from other people, and from a sense of peace isn't just internal, but ecological. Our emotional and cultural wounds mirror the environmental ones. When we treat land as disposable, we start treating ourselves that way too. And maybe healing begins not just with therapy, but with our feet in the soil. That's right, just walk around barefoot in your backyard a little bit. With planting, tending, and honoring, with remembering that we belong to something bigger, and we always have. Amen and blessed be. And now I'm going to call up Nancy to give us a little presentation, fresh from handing out seed balls at RAGBRAI. Come on up. She's got a nice little presentation. Do you want to stand up here? Okay, she's going to start up here.
Good morning. How wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation, Mary Kay. And your words are music to my ears. Just wonderful. I'm not new to this beautiful church. Our family moved here 25 years ago when I was stationed at the U.S. Strategic Command at Offutt Air Force Base. So I'm a veteran. We attended church here when our kids were small, and they both grew up in the educational, the religious education here at the church. So I'm very familiar with the service in this church, and it's a great honor to be here. And I want to just try to put my presentation in the context of a spiritual path. And it is definitely a covenant of reciprocity that has drawn me to this work. I'm a gardener. I've been a gardener my entire adult life. And I'm also, I believe in environmentalism and conservation and have wanted to support that my entire adult life. So this work was natural for me to fall into. I retired in 2004, so it was over 20 years ago. And then this work just came to me. It wasn't planned. So my presentation is called Saving the Monarchs. And I'm going to try to stay up here. So our nonprofit is called Milkweed Matters. And our mission is to help educate the public about pollinator conservation and help restore habitat along roadsides and in community gardens. And we do this through outreach. We visit schools and work with scouts and church groups and garden clubs and science museums, and we educate about pollinator conservation, and then we make thousands of these seed balls. And we put milkweed and nectar flowers in the seed balls, and we take them and they get tossed along the roadsides to help restore habitat. And then we also support community gardens. We sponsor a number of community gardens around the area. So a little history, Milkweed Matters has been around for 11 years. It was founded by a young woman that wanted to help, and she was riding this big bike ride across Iowa called RAGBRAI. And this is one of the largest bike rides in the United States. Bike riders come from all over the country, and they ride across the entire state of Iowa. It's 500 miles, and it takes an entire week. And this year was their 52nd year, so they've been doing it a while. And there are thousands of riders. So I heard about the seed balls back in 2016, and I started volunteering with her. I'm a master gardener, and I started volunteering to help. And then she moved away, and she was going to dissolve the nonprofit, and I raised my hand and said, I'll take it over. Please don't dissolve it. So it was just a natural thing. So our pollinators are in trouble. Scientists have been sounding the alarm about the decline of pollinators for many years. And in 2016, a United Nations report indicated that 40% of invertebrate pollinators were threatened, and particularly bees and butterflies. And that's 16% of vertebrate pollinators, and that would be your hummingbirds and bats and small lizards and that kind of thing. They're also threatened. So we've known for a while they're in trouble. And so why do we care about the pollinators? Why are they important to us? Well, they pollinate our agricultural crops, and it's huge amounts of money in terms of economy for a global economy, and then also in our country as well. Pollinators are responsible for helping plants reproduce. Over 80% of plants are pollinated and reproduced through insects or other small creatures. And if we didn't have pollinators, the plants couldn't reproduce. And this impacts our food. 1 in 3 bites of our food, 30% of our food, we can thank pollinators for. And then not only that, but the insects themselves are part of the food chain. And small birds, baby birds, eat caterpillars. And if these insects disappear, then bird populations start to decline, which is already happening. And small mammals and other reptiles start to disappear as well. So will have huge impacts not only on people, but on the other wildlife. And our monarch butterflies are in trouble as well. And we consider the monarch like a flag, sort of like an indicator species, like the canary in the coal mine, if you will. And I must thank Mary Kay for this beautiful, just what a beautiful welcome. So the monarchs used to be plentiful, but in the last 25 years, their population has dropped 90%. And so they're really in trouble. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service right now is considering whether or not to put them on the endangered species list. So again, the monarchs are a symbol. They're a symbol for the pollinators. They're beautiful, and everybody loves them, and they love to see them come into their gardens. So they're an indicator, and if we can help them, we can help other pollinators as well. So the monarchs, they're unusual because they make this incredible migration. All of the monarch butterflies east of the Rocky Mountains migrate to Mexico. Now, it takes 4 or 5 generations for them to make this epic migration. And, before I talk about the migration, I want to just address the habitat loss. The entire center of our country used to be 40 million acres of tall grass prairie. And this ecosystem just literally covered from the Great Lakes south into Kansas. And it was just massive. And the entire tallgrass prairie has been plowed up. There's less than 0.1% of prairie left. And this is an entire ecosystem that's been eliminated. So a lot of the wildlife that used to be here has already scattered, and this is the habitat loss that we're talking about. The plants that the pollinators need used to be in the tallgrass prairie. These are native plants, and they're native to our region, and they're adapted. The insects have evolved with them, and they're adapted to our area. So the monarchs, usually in the summer, the monarchs live 2 to 6 weeks. And they move through North America, and they lay their eggs, and then in the fall, they begin their migration to Mexico. Now, that last butterfly of the season is different. It is a supergeneration, and they live 8 months. That last butterfly is born in August and September, and they fly all the way to Mexico. And they stay in the forest in Mexico. They migrate to an area that is in the mountains west of Mexico City, and they hang in these trees called the Oyamel fir forest, and they stay there all winter. And then in the spring, they will begin, when the temperature is right and the angle of the sun is right, they will start to breed. And then they will fly north, and they're looking for that special plant to lay their eggs on. And that special plant is milkweed. It's the only plant they can lay their eggs on, and the only plant their caterpillar can eat. And if they can't find it, then they'll just die without laying their eggs. So then that super butterfly, as soon as she lays her eggs, she will die, her life is over, and then the cycle continues. So it's pretty amazing that nature has evolved to have this migration. So their life cycle, they lay their eggs on the milkweed, and it takes about 4 or 5 days for the egg to hatch out into a tiny caterpillar, and they start eating right away, and it takes about 2 weeks for that caterpillar to become a chrysalis, and then it takes about 2 weeks for that chrysalis to hatch out into a butterfly. So once they're a butterfly, they must have nectar. That's what the butterfly eats, and that comes from the flowers. So for their habitat, they need milkweed to lay their eggs on, and they need nectar flowers for the butterfly. So their annual cycle, they'll begin moving north in March, and that first generation will lay their eggs, and then we'll start to see them in our area around May, end of April and May, when our milkweed begins to break ground. If you have milkweed in your yard, it usually starts to sprout around April, beginning of May. And then as the season progresses, the population grows, they go all the way to Canada, and then in the fall, they'll begin their migration. So their habitat, if we're going to restore habitat, we need milkweed and nectar flowers. And it's best to have flowers that will bloom all season. So a full season bloom, spring, summer, and fall. And then in Mexico, the habitat is the Oyamel fir trees. And these are high in the mountains, up about 10,000 feet. And this is where the monarchs cluster. And they form these colonies, millions of them. And they just hibernate in the trees. And then on sunny days, towards the end of winter, they'll stir and they'll come down the mountain for water. And then they'll go back into their colony until it's ready to begin the migration north. It's just an amazing sight. And then the little map on the far right of the screen there shows the area where the monarchs migrate. It's very small. It's an area in the mountains that's only about 75 miles long and about 75 miles wide. So it's very specialized microclimate. So that was the bad news. The bad news is the habitat is gone and they're threatened. So how can we help? What's the good news? Well, we can help restore habitat. We can plant in our yards. We can plant at our churches and schools and in our communities. We can not use pesticides because the pesticides kill all insects. We can support conservation education for the next generation, and we can advocate for their protection. We can also be involved in citizen science projects to help scientists learn more about the monarchs. So our work with Milkweed Matters, we can't do it alone. This is a huge problem, and I feel like our work is like a drop in the bucket for this ocean of problem. It's just so big. So we have to have partnerships. We have partnerships in the community that help us do our work and where we can leverage each other's connections and just help each other out. And then we've also been the recipient of some grants that allow us to sponsor gardens, school gardens and other gardens around the community. So we're very grateful for that. So our seed ball initiative, this is probably what we spend most of our time on. We go out to schools and scout groups and just all kinds of different groups, and the kids make the seed balls. They learn about the conservation, and they help us make the seed balls. And children understand. They get it, even the little ones. I would say as young as kindergartners totally understand. And if you start talking about endangered species and extinction, their eyes get about this big, and they are just so anxious to help. And it's empowering for them to be able to just roll a little seed ball and help an endangered species. So I tell the kids just about every time we have a workshop, don't let anyone tell you that you can't help, because you are helping right now. You are helping an endangered species. And so that's powerful. For me, the education outreach is the most important part of this. It's just so wonderful to connect with the children and watch them understand and make the connections. This is just some photos of our different outreach workshops. It's always so wonderful, so joyful. The kids just love it. Gets a little out of control sometimes, but it's just great. And then we save the seed balls up, and we take them to this big bike ride to RAGBRAI. And I just got back Wednesday night. We were out there for 3 days. We partner with this Iowa conservation team, and we move with the riders across the state. So we only did 3 days this year. The limiting factor really is how many seed balls we have. So this year we had about 10,000, and that is about 12 5-gallon bucketfuls. And so when I go to a workshop, I bring them home on big trays in the back of my car and dry them out in the sun, and then put them in 5-gallon buckets and store them in my barn. And then when it's time for RAGBRAI, just load up the car, and I have a tent, and it's just wonderful. And to see the smiling faces of these bike riders, many of them come back year after year, and they're just so excited to help and toss these seed balls out there. So we tell them, you might be wondering, well, the farmers, they mow and they spray, and so we tell the riders, don't throw them in a farm field. Don't throw them in a ditch that's going to get mowed. Wait until you're out on the open road and you see wildflowers and prairie restoration, and that's where you're going to toss them. So some of our community gardens that we sponsor in the area, we have a couple in Bellevue, and Mary Kay, I just wanted to mention that Bellevue is a Bee City USA as well. And they actually came first. Bellevue did it first, and then Council Bluffs followed, and we formed a pollinator group about 4 years ago in Council Bluffs called the Pollinator Alliance of the Heartland, or PATH. And out of the PATH group, we had a lady that took that idea of Council Bluffs becoming a Bee City, and the library sponsored it. So I'm so proud of them. They have just embraced it, and if you go to their city website, they have all the information about native plants, and it's wonderful. So just some quick best practices for pollinator gardens. If you have a garden of your own, plant native. You want to plant prairie plants. And they're not all 10 feet tall. There's a lot of prairie plant. Well, milkweed is a prairie plant. There's a lot of native plants that are well behaved, that do wonderful in an urban garden or a suburban garden. So plant native, that's the first thing, because these insects have evolved with the plants. And if you have native plants in your yard, they come. I mean, your plants are going to be filled with native bees and butterflies, and it's just remarkable. You're going to also want to not use pesticides or herbicides, or if you really feel like you need to use a little, just be very, very careful. And they're so volatile. You know, a little bit of wind and, you know, your garden could be, or you could be hurting your neighbor's garden. And that happens a lot. I have a lot of people that tell me that their neighbor sprays and it comes over into their yard. And let's see, what else? I'm trying to read my slide. I may have to walk down there so I can see it. But anyway, you want to plant for full season bloom. And you want to minimize your cleanup in the fall. Raking the leaves might make your yard look nice, but you're raking up next year's pollinators. And then cutting back your flowers, the seeds on the flower heads are food for the birds. And also the stems provide nesting sites for native bees. So you want to plant fall blooming nectar flowers to support the monarchs while they're migrating. And that's very important. So full season bloom in your garden. And this takes some skill to select plants that are going to bloom spring, summer, and fall. And don't forget about fall, because the monarchs really need that. And then, again, the fall blooming nectar flowers. And around here, our state flower in Nebraska is goldenrod. That's a wonderful fall blooming nectar flower. And then also asters. And there's just a number of them that bloom in the fall that are great. And then another thing you can do in your yard, there are certain plants that are like powerhouse plants for pollinators. They're called keystone plants, native plants. So the oaks, the cherry trees, and they support more pollinator species than many other plants that are not native to our area. And then again, just those end of season practices. Do less and have more pollinators. I mean, you can clean up, but try not to cut everything back. And then more ways to help. In Mexico, the forests are threatened because the people that live around the reserves are quite poor, and they still cook with wood. So they are cutting down the trees in the forest where the monarchs overwinter. So they plant trees in Mexico, and they also advocate to protect them. And in the United States, we can visit down there and help these communities by spending money in their community, and also by donating to nonprofits in the United States that help the monarchs. So my friend Nancy Scott and I, she's also a member of this church, or has been around this church for a number of years. We have traveled to Mexico several times, and after our first trip to Mexico, we got really inspired by how fragile the migration is and how fragile the habitat in Mexico is. And we really wanted to tell the story about the monarchs. And so we wrote a little children's book. And I have the book downstairs. We sell the book, and we donate the proceeds to protecting the habitat in Mexico, because we feel like up in the United States, we have a lot of resources, and a lot of people are working on this in the United States. And we feel like the folks in Mexico need more help. So that book will be downstairs. And that concludes my presentation. I feel hopeful that we can save the pollinators if we all pitch in and do our part. Thank you very much.
Okay, and if you want to join me in our closing hymn, it's in the teal hymnal, and we'll just do 2 verses, the oneness of everything.
Gracious
Our closing words are by Wayne Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone.